Oh, I am 50 years old today, standing in front of a mirror that reflects a woman the world calls beautiful. Yet all I see is a polished marble tombstone for the girl I murdered 30 years ago to survive. My skin is still smooth. My eyes still hold that emerald fire that once drove men to madness. But beneath this expensive silk dress, my heart is a jagged piece of glass that cuts me every time I take a breath or try to remember the warmth of a touch that was bought with lies. They say that a woman in her prime is a dangerous thing. But they don't tell you about the danger of the silence that follows the storm. The way the echoes of a forbidden bedroom can haunt a hallway for 3 decades. I look at my reflection and I see the ghost of the man who ruined me, too. The one who taught me that the highest form of pleasure is always followed by the deepest, most agonizing descent into a hell of our own making and selfish design. I remember the way the rain felt against the window of that London flat. The sound of the city fading away until the only thing left in the universe was the rhythm of our breathing and the terrifying realization that I was falling for a man I could never truly own. He was my husband's brother, a shadow in the corner of my perfect life. A constant reminder that the safety I had traded my soul for was nothing more than a golden cage with bars made of cold, hard emeralds. We existed in the spaces between the seconds, in the stolen glances over dinner, the accidental brush of fingers that felt like a lightning strike across my very soul, igniting a fire that threatened to burn down the entire family legacy. Every time we were alone, the air became thick with a tension so heavy it was hard to breathe. A carnal pull that defied logic and morality, making me feel like a predator and a prey all at the same time in the dark. The first time he touched me properly, it wasn't a gentle caress, but a desperate claim. A collision of 2 broken people trying to find a reason to live in the wreckage of their own making and failed expectations. I felt my skin ignite under his palms. A sensation so intense and so wrong that I wanted to scream and weep, yet I leaned into him. Hungry for the destruction that I knew was coming for us, both in the end of the night. I lied to my husband for 10,000 days, looking into his trusting eyes while the scent of his brother was still clinging to my hair like a perfume made of sign and regret and the salty taste of sea spray. There is a specific kind of agony in being a perfect wife, while you are secretly a woman who has tasted the fruit of the underworld and found it sweeter than anything the light of day could ever hope to provide to a starving heart. As the years passed, the beauty everyone envied became my greatest weapon and my heaviest shield. A way to distract the world from the hollow space where my conscience used to live before I traded it for a few hours of ecstasy. I moved from the grey streets of London to the sun-drenched coasts of Australia, hoping the heat would burn the memory of him out of my blood. But the ocean only whispered his name back to me in the crashing of every. Now I sit in this mansion in the hills of Los Angeles. A woman of power and grace, but tonight the walls are closing in and the secrets are clawing at my throat. 2, demanding to be let out before they choke the very last bit of life from my lungs. I am 50, I am beautiful, and I am utterly alone in a world that thinks it knows me. But you are about to hear the truth of what happens when a woman chooses desire over her own salvation and her very soul. I can still feel the heat of that final night we spent together. The way the sweat pooled in the small of my back as we whispered promises we both knew were lies. Our bodies entwined in a dance of death that felt more like living than anything I had ever experienced before or since. We were 2 stars colliding, knowing that the explosion would leave nothing but dust, yet we could stop the gravity of our lust from pulling us into the center of a black hole that swallowed our futures whole. If you saw me on the street, you would turn your head and wonder what it's like to have it all. Never knowing that the woman you admire is a walking graveyard of unsaid words and unfinished business that smells of expensive scotch and old faded regrets. I have reached the age where the past is more real than the present, where the faces of the dead are clearer than the faces of the living, and the only thing that keeps me warm is the memory of a fire that should have killed me. Single wave.
The silence in this house is a living thing, a cold presence that follows me from room to room as I adjust the collar of my silk robe and pour another glass of vintage wine to numb the edges of my jagged memory. I have lived across 3 continents, running from the ghost of a man who never even chased me. Yet he is the only person who truly knows the shape of my nakedness and the depth of the darkness I hide behind my practiced high society smile. In the humid nights of Sydney, I used to walk along the harbour until my feet bled, hoping the physical pain would distract me from the spiritual rot that was spreading through my chest like a slow-moving poison from a beautiful snake. I watched the young couples holding hands and felt a bitter envy that tasted like copper. Because they were allowed to love in the light, while I was forced to worship my God in a cellar of lies and heavy, velvet curtains. My husband never suspected that when I closed my eyes under him, I was actually miles away, lost in the memory of a rougher touch and a deeper voice that whispered things that would make a saint blush and a demon tremble with fear. It is a terrifying thing to realize that you are an expert at the art of the fake climax and the hollow "I love you," turning your entire marriage into a long-form performance that deserves an Oscar but only earns you a slow, agonizing death of the spirit. I moved to the United States thinking that a New York penthouse would elevate me above the reach of my past. But the higher I climbed, the more the wind sounded like his laughter echoing through the canyons of the skyscrapers at 3 in the morning. I surrounded myself with the elite, the rich, and the powerful, only to find that every one of them was just as broken and hollowed out by their own secret lusts as I was, hiding behind their Botox and their billion-dollar bank accounts. There was a man in Melbourne who tried to love me after my husband passed, a man who saw the fire in me and thought he could tame it. But he didn't realize that you cannot tame a woman who has already been burned to ash and rebuilt herself out of the cinders of a forbidden affair. I let him into my bed but never into my head, using his body as a temporary shield against the loneliness that gnaws at me every time the sun goes down and the shadows begin to stretch across the expansive hardwood floors. I look at photos of myself from 20 years ago and I see a woman who was a masterpiece of deception, her jewelry shining brighter than her eyes, her posture perfect even as her world was tilting on its axis towards a final, inevitable catastrophe. People tell me I haven't aged a day, that I am a timeless beauty who has conquered the clock. But I know that I am just a well-preserved relic of a war that nobody else even knows was fought, or won, or lost in the dark.
They say that at 60, a woman becomes invisible to the world, a ghost wandering through the aisles of a grocery store or sitting silently on a park bench. But what they don't really realize is that beneath this gray hair and these tired eyes lies a fire that once burned down everything I loved. I stand here today looking at the crashing waves of the Pacific, clutching a letter that has stayed sealed for 40 years, feeling the weight of 1,000 stolen kisses and a single, devastating choice that redefined the very meaning of my existence. I remember the summer of 1984 in London like it was yesterday. The air thick with heat and the scent of rain on hot pavement. When I was young, reckless, and pulsing with a desire that I didn't yet understand. Long before the world told me to be quiet and small. I was vibrant then, a woman who sought touch like a flower seeks the sun, never realizing that the most beautiful blooms are often the ones that are picked and crushed before they ever have the chance to fully wither away. It started with a glance across a crowded underground station, a moment where time seemed to fracture and bleed into a million different possibilities, and I felt a physical ache in my chest that I knew, even then, would be my ultimate undoing. We think we are the masters of our own hearts, but that night I learned that we are merely passengers on a ship driven by storms of passion and regret, sailing toward a horizon that promises everything but delivers only the salt of our own bitter, lonely tears. I let him touch my soul before he ever touched my skin, an intimacy so profound and dangerous that it felt like a betrayal of every moral I had been taught by my mother. Yet I couldn't stop myself from falling deeper into the abyss of his shadow. There is a specific kind of hunger that only a woman who has been starved of true affection can feel. A craving that bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the blood, demanding to be fed regardless of the cost to her reputation or her future. Now, as the wind whips through my coat and the sun begins to set on a life half-lived, I realize that the secrets we keep are the only things that truly belong to us, even if they are the very things that keep us awake at night, screaming into the silence of an empty, cold bedroom. I am going to tell you everything, not because I want your forgiveness, but because I am tired of carrying this heavy golden burden alone. And it is time for the truth to finally breathe the cold, unforgiving air of the present day.